You've been told your emotions make you human, that to feel deeply is strength. But that's the biggest lie society ever sold you. Because every time you react, you're being controlled. Every outrage you post, every heartbreak you chase, every burst of anger you justify, it all feeds the system that profits from your weakness. The world doesn't reward emotional men. It exploits them. Look around. The calm ones always win. The men who don't flinch under pressure. The ones who stay silent when others beg for validation. They're not cold. They're calculated. And that's why power always finds its way into their hands. Machiavelli once said, "A wise man should never suffer for what he can avoid. An emotion, uncontrolled, is always avoidable. When you stop reacting, you stop bleeding energy. When you detach, you start to see everything clearly. Manipulation, games, power plays. You start moving like a strategist, not a victim." This video isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about mastering them. It's about becoming untouchable in a world that feeds on chaos. Because once you learn to control your emotions, you'll notice something terrifying. Everyone else is still ruled by theirs. And that's when you realize power doesn't come from being emotional. It comes from being unreadable. Welcome to the art of cold control. If you're ready to stop being ruled by feelings and start ruling through focus, then stay till the end. And if you're built for truth over comfort, subscribe, because this isn't motivation, this is mental warfare. 1. Emotions are the easiest way to be controlled. Every empire, every corporation, every manipulator, they all understand one thing. You don't need to enslave people with chains when you can enslave them with emotion. Fear, anger, love, validation, these are the invisible strings that move the masses. Men think they're acting on logic, when in reality they're just reacting to emotional triggers placed there on purpose. Politicians use fear to win votes. Advertisers use insecurity to sell products. Even your relationships use guilt, affection, and silence to make you bend. That's not coincidence. That's strategy. The emotional man lives in reaction, not control. He's pulled in every direction because his internal state belongs to the world around him. Someone insults him, he explodes. Someone praises him, he glows. Someone ignores him, he breaks. He's like a puppet, moved by invisible strings he refuses to cut. And here's the dark truth. The system depends on it. An emotional man can be sold anything. He buys distraction to escape boredom. He buys validation to escape insecurity. He buys pleasure to escape pain. He never realizes that every time he chases a feeling, he's paying for his own chains. But the cold man, the man who observes before reacting, cannot be controlled. Because you can't manipulate someone who doesn't seek approval or fear loss. You can't provoke a reaction in someone who has already accepted reality. When you stop being emotionally predictable, you become dangerous. Because no one knows how to move you anymore. They try guilt, nothing. They try anger, silence. They try flattery, indifference. And that's when people start to fear you. Not because you're loud, but because you're unreadable. Machiavelli wrote that the one who controls fear controls power. In today's world, it's not about fear of death or war. It's fear of rejection, judgment, and being misunderstood. Once you conquer those, you rise above 99% of people instantly. The secret isn't to feel nothing. It's to choose what's worth feeling. Anger, fear, excitement, all become tools in your hands, not weapons turned against you. Because emotion, when mastered, becomes energy. But emotion, when uncontrolled, becomes a leash. So before reacting to anything, pause. Ask yourself, who benefits from me feeling this way? If the answer isn't you, then you already know who's in control. 2. Your feelings aren't reality. They're weapons used against you. The most dangerous illusion of the modern world is the belief that your feelings are truth. They're not. They're tools, and most of the time, they're not even yours. Every emotion you experience has a trigger, and in today's world, those triggers are manufactured. The system profits when you're emotional because emotional people don't think, they react. And reactions can be predicted, studied, and monetized. Look at your phone for proof. Your outrage, your heartbreak, your anxiety, they all feed an algorithm that knows you better than you know yourself. It doesn't care about your peace. It only cares about your attention. And attention is currency. The news doesn't inform you. It provokes you. Social media doesn't connect you. It controls you. Your favorite apps aren't free. You're paying with your psychology. The more emotionally unstable you are, the richer they get. That's the trap. They make you believe your emotions are sacred, that expressing yourself is liberation. But what if it's actually imprisonment disguised as authenticity? Because here's the truth. When you identify too deeply with how you feel, you become programmable. Every headline shapes your worldview. Every comment ruins your day. Every notification decides your worth. You think you're living freely, but you're living in emotional chains, reacting to the stimuli of a system designed to keep you weak. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote that rulers must govern the minds of men by appearing to serve their emotions. He knew emotion was the easiest path to obedience. People won't think critically if you can make them feel deeply. It's how revolutions are crushed before they even begin, not with force, but with distraction. And today, distraction wears many faces. Outrage culture, celebrity drama, endless scrolling, meaningless arguments. Each one designed to drain your mental energy until you no longer question why you're empty. But once you step back, once you see it, you can't unsee it. You realize that most of your pain wasn't created by life. It was engineered by systems that profit from your reaction. They want you impulsive, not intentional. Emotional, not logical. Attached, not sovereign. So how do you break it? You reclaim your inner distance. You stop assuming your feelings are reality. You start observing them like a strategist. When anger rises, ask, who benefits if I stay angry? When jealousy hits, ask, who profits if I feel inadequate? When fear shows up, ask, who gains if I freeze? Once you start questioning your emotions, you weaken their control. You turn them from commands into data, from orders into insights. That's when you begin to separate truth from programming. That's when you stop being a consumer and start becoming a commander. The wise man doesn't trust his feelings blindly. He studies them, filters them, uses them. Because feelings are weather, they pass. But truth is the mountain beneath it all. The system wants you drowning in emotional storms so you forget the mountain exists. Stay still long enough, and you'll see it again. You'll realize the calm man is not emotionless. He's untouchable, because no system can enslave the man who no longer believes every feeling he has is real. 3. Compassion without boundaries is self-destruction. You've been told your whole life to be kind, to forgive, to understand, to always see the best in people. But no one warned you that unguarded compassion, the kind that leaks into every corner of your life, is the easiest way to destroy yourself. Kindness without control isn't virtue. It's vulnerability dressed in moral clothing. The world doesn't reward purity, it exploits it. And every time you give without discernment, every time you extend empathy to people who haven't earned it, you're teaching them that your energy has no price. That's not compassion, that's self-betrayal. Look around. How many times have you tried to help someone who wasn't willing to help themselves and ended up drained, bitter, questioning your own worth? How many apologies have you given just to keep the peace when the other person didn't even respect the war you were fighting inside? Compassion without boundaries doesn't make you good. It makes you fuel. And predators, emotional, social, even spiritual, can smell that fuel from miles away. You think they're drawn to your light. They're actually drawn to your open gates. Machiavelli understood this in The Prince. He warned that mercy, when applied without strategy, becomes cruelty to yourself. A ruler who forgives too often invites rebellion, not loyalty. Because mercy without fear loses its meaning. It's the same in modern life. When you hand out compassion like it's infinite, people stop valuing it. When you tolerate every disrespect under the banner of understanding, people stop respecting you. And soon, you become the emotional dumping ground for everyone else's dysfunction, because your silence tells them it's safe to unload. You call it empathy. They call it convenience. There's a reason the strongest men appear cold. It's not because they lack compassion. It's because they know it must be rationed. They understand that too much warmth burns. Compassion is power when you choose who deserves it. Without that filter, it's just self-sabotage in disguise. The problem is, we live in a world that glorifies self-erasure. You're told that real goodness means absorbing everyone's pain. But no one tells you what that turns you into, a hollow version of yourself built entirely around other people's comfort. That's not kindness. That's slavery. You can care deeply without giving endlessly. You can be empathetic and still say no. You can love people and still walk away from those who feed off your softness. In fact, that's real compassion, because genuine compassion isn't about pleasing others. It's about preserving the strength that allows you to keep giving without breaking. Ask yourself, when was the last time you gave out of love versus guilt? When was the last time you helped because you wanted to, not because you were afraid of being labeled heartless? The moment you start giving from guilt, your kindness becomes currency, and everyone starts cashing in. But when you draw boundaries, something powerful happens. People begin to respect your presence. Your words carry more weight. Your energy becomes rare, and rarity commands value. You stop being the person everyone calls when they need to unload. You become the person people listen to, because the man who controls his compassion controls his kingdom. The man who gives without control will one day wake up surrounded by people who only stayed because they could feed off his excess. So ask yourself, Are you kind or are you being used? Learn to weaponize your compassion. Give it sparingly. Direct it intelligently. Protect it fiercely. Because the world doesn't respect open hearts. It respects guarded ones that open by choice. That's not cruelty. That's wisdom. And if you don't learn it, someone colder, smarter, and hungrier will teach it to you the hard way. 4. Anger is just insecurity in disguise. Anger feels powerful. It feels raw, masculine, unstoppable, like the only honest reaction left in a world that keeps pushing your limits. But here's the truth no one wants to admit. Most anger isn't power. It's panic. It's the fear of losing control, wrapped in the illusion of dominance. The moment you explode, you reveal what triggers you. You show your hand. And in a world ruled by manipulation, that's the same as walking into battle naked. You think your anger makes people respect you. It doesn't. It makes them study you. They learn how to press your buttons, how to lead you by your ego, how to make you self-destruct without ever lifting a finger. Machiavelli warned about this centuries ago. Never let your enemies know what stirs your blood, because the man who can be provoked can be controlled. And that's not power. That's slavery. Most men use anger to mask what they're truly afraid of: rejection, irrelevance, disrespect, exposure. So they roar. They raise their voices. They flex their emotions louder than logic, not realizing they've already lost the frame. Rage feels strong because it feels alive, but it's only alive for one reason. It's fueled by fear. Think about it. If you were truly powerful, if you were truly in command of yourself, would someone else's words have the ability to shake your center? Would you need to yell to feel heard? Would you need to prove anything? The calm man doesn't need to. His silence is the dominance. His control is the proof. When someone tries to provoke him, they find nothing to grab onto, no emotional handle to pull. And that's what terrifies people, because you can't fight what you can't move. The angry man, on the other hand, is predictable. He's easy to bait. He mistakes emotional explosions for power because he's addicted to the feeling of being in control, even though every outburst proves he's not. Here's the irony. The calm man might look passive, but calmness isn't passivity, it's precision. He doesn't react immediately because he's watching, calculating, waiting for the exact moment when silence hits harder than any scream ever could. That's not softness. That's strategy. And it's what separates men who lead from men who are led by their emotions. Society has sold men the idea that expressing anger is healthy. And yes, bottled rage can destroy you from within. But expression doesn't mean explosion. Power isn't measured by how loud you react. It's measured by how little they can make you move. You win the moment you master your emotional thermostat. When someone tries to heat you up, you cool down. When they try to freeze you out, you stay centered. That's real control, when your inner world doesn't shift based on someone else's chaos. You've seen it before. In the boardroom, the battlefield, or a breakup. The man who loses his temper always loses position. He says things he can't unsay. He makes choices he can't reverse. And later, when the adrenaline fades, he realizes he wasn't fighting then. He was fighting himself. The truth is brutal, but liberating. Anger is just the body's way of screaming, "I feel powerless." So when you feel rage rising, pause. Not because you're weak, but because you're reclaiming command. That pause is where you regain leverage. That pause is where your opponent realizes they can't move you. Calmness is not emotional numbness. It's controlled danger. It's the ability to feel everything and reveal nothing. And that scares people more than shouting ever could, because calmness forces others to confront their own instability. Your silence becomes a mirror, showing them what they lack. So stop mistaking volume for power. Stop confusing rage for strength. The loudest man in the room is rarely the most dangerous. He's usually the most insecure. The calm man doesn't announce his dominance. He embodies it. Remember, the truly powerful don't need to prove they're powerful. They just need to remain unmoved while everyone else burns. That's not anger. That's mastery. 5. Emotional men can't be trusted with power. Power doesn't belong to the loud. It belongs to the stable. History doesn't remember the emotional. It remembers the calculated. The men who stayed cold when others begged for mercy. The ones who could stare into chaos and still think clearly. Because here's the brutal truth. Emotion destroys judgment. And judgment is the foundation of all power. Every empire that fell, every king that lost his crown, every man who ruined his own life, it always started the same way, a moment of emotional weakness, a burst of rage, a desperate act of love, a decision made for validation instead of victory. Men who can't control their emotions can never hold power for long. They can rise fast, yes, but they fall faster, because emotion makes you reactive, and reaction makes you predictable. And once you're predictable, you're no longer dangerous. Look through history, the pattern never changes. Julius Caesar died because he trusted emotion disguised as loyalty. Napoleon lost his empire because he overestimated himself in a moment of pride. Kings, generals, even CEOs, they all fall to the same trap. They confuse passion for power. But passion burns. Strategy builds. Power doesn't demand that you stop feeling. It demands that you stop being ruled by what you feel. Emotion clouds precision, and precision is how you win wars without lifting a sword. The emotional man might look alive, but his fate is always written by cooler minds. Because for every man who reacts, there's another who planned that reaction. The world is built on that hierarchy. The emotional are the soldiers. The detached are the commanders. You see it everywhere, in politics, business, relationships. The emotional man gets baited, exposed, outmaneuvered. He speaks too soon. He posts too much. He trusts too easily. He fights battles that don't matter because he needs to prove a point. The calculated man, he watches. He listens. He gathers information and strikes once when the timing serves him. That's the difference between control and chaos. Even Machiavelli said, "A prince must not be merciful out of emotion, but only out of strategy." Mercy, love, kindness, all can be powerful tools. But when they're driven by emotion instead of intent, they become liabilities. That's why the emotional man should never lead. Because leadership demands detachment, the ability to make decisions that others can't stomach. It's easy to act powerful when nothing's at stake. But true power is revealed when everything's on the line, when emotion is screaming at you to act, and you do nothing until the moment is right. That's the difference between a tyrant and a strategist. The tyrant reacts. The strategist decides. And the calm man, he never explains his silence. He doesn't justify his restraint, because he knows power doesn't live in words. It lives in presence, in that eerie stillness that says, I know something you don't. Men who rule the world, whether in kingdoms or boardrooms, all share one trait: emotional control. They can look betrayal in the face and smile. They can hear lies and not flinch. They can lose everything and still calculate their next move while everyone else drowns in panic. That's why emotional men are always the pawns of the calm. They serve as the fuel, the chaos that gives meaning to the order others create. But when you start to discipline your emotions, you flip the script. You stop being moved and start moving others. You stop chasing validation and start creating influence. You stop reacting and begin to direct. Because emotion is natural, but control is divine. The world bows to men who can master both. If you want power, real power, start by controlling the one empire you actually own, your inner state. Because until you do, everything you build can be taken away in one moment of weakness. A man who can stay calm in the storm doesn't just survive, he commands it. And that's why emotional men will always follow the ones who don't flinch. Power respects restraint. It always has. 6. Detachment is the highest form of discipline. Detachment isn't coldness, it's control. You don't conquer your emotions by suppressing them. You conquer them by observing them without reacting. That's the difference between a slave and a king. Most men think discipline means forcing yourself to act against your emotions. But that's not mastery, that's resistance. And resistance always breaks under pressure. Real discipline is when your emotions stop dictating your actions entirely. It's when anger rises but your face doesn't twitch. When fear whispers but your body doesn't move. When temptation calls but you simply watch it pass. That stillness, that internal silence, is where true power lives. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. He wrote that a prince must appear moved by passion, but never truly be moved by it. Why? Because detachment allows you to play the game without being consumed by it. It gives you the clarity to make decisions that others, trapped in emotion, could never see coming. And here's the truth. Detachment isn't apathy. It's precision. It's choosing not to drown in every wave that hits you. Weak men call it cold, but cold men rule warm worlds. Look around you. The most dangerous people you'll ever meet are not the loud ones. They're the ones who seem calm when they should be furious, collected when they should be desperate, silent when everyone else is screaming, because that silence isn't emptiness, it's focus. The detached man sees what others miss. He notices tone instead of words. He measures intent instead of emotion. He studies patterns while everyone else is too busy reacting to pain or pleasure. That's why detachment is discipline, because it demands you step back from your ego, from that part of you that always needs to prove, respond, or defend. When you're detached, your energy stops leaking into meaningless battles. You stop explaining yourself to people beneath your purpose. You stop trying to win arguments that don't affect your empire. Every man who ever built something great had to detach first. From people, from validation, from outcomes, because attachment to comfort, to approval, to results breeds fear, and fear clouds the mind. A man attached to anything can be manipulated through that attachment. You want to see how powerful you are? Watch how calm you stay when what you love is tested. When something is taken from you, when someone disrespects you, when life refuses to go your way, that's where real strength shows itself. Most men break in those moments. They chase, they beg, they react. They lose their center because they were never truly grounded to begin with. The detached man, he feels the storm, but he doesn't become it. He watches chaos move around him, but he remains still, unbothered, unreadable, untouchable. And that calm terrifies people, because they can't understand it. They can't manipulate it. They can't find a weakness to exploit. That's what makes detachment the highest form of discipline. It's not about being emotionless. It's about being unshakable. It's about owning your reactions so completely that nothing external has the power to move you unless you allow it. When you reach that level of control, you stop being reactive and you become strategic. You no longer seek peace from others. You create it. You no longer chase validation. You command respect. Detachment is what separates warriors from wanderers. It's the invisible armor that protects your purpose from being corrupted by temporary emotions. Because the truth is, emotions are weather. They come and go. They rise and fall. But discipline, that's the climate. It's the consistent environment you build through self-command. When you detach, you stop living like a leaf in the wind, tossed by circumstance, swayed by other people's moods. You become the wind itself, invisible, unstoppable, and in complete control of direction. That's what Machiavellian calm truly means. Not heartlessness, but sovereignty. Not numbness, but mastery. So next time emotion hits, don't suppress it. Don't fight it. Just watch it like a passing storm. Because the man who can observe his chaos without moving will always rule the ones drowning in theirs. That's the discipline kings are made of. 7. Cold doesn't mean heartless. It means focused. They'll call you cold the moment you stop explaining yourself. They'll call you heartless the moment you stop bending your purpose to please them. But what they're really saying is you've stopped being controllable. Because in a world ruled by emotion, the man who moves with logic becomes the enemy. Being cold doesn't mean you've lost your soul. It means you've refined it. You've learned that emotions are meant to be felt, not followed. That compassion without control is chaos. Weak men think feeling everything makes them real. But in reality, it just makes them reactive. They bleed for people who would never defend them. They explain themselves to those who've already made up their minds. They call it being human, but what it really is lack of discipline. Cold men aren't cruel, they're clear. They don't move from impulse. They move from intention. When they speak, every word is chosen. When they act, every move is calculated. When they walk away, it's not because they stopped caring. It's because they finally started thinking. And that's what people fear most. A man who can feel deeply, yet remain unmoved. Because emotions are the easiest way to control someone. Fear makes you freeze. Anger makes you expose your weakness. Love makes you compromise your power. But the man who stays centered while others drown in feeling, he's the one the world can't break. Think of great leaders, strategists, warriors. They all had one thing in common. composure under fire. They didn't panic when the world screamed. They didn't crumble under pressure or flinch when betrayed. They stayed cold, not because they didn't care, but because caring too much blinds the eye of judgment. Coldness is clarity. It's the ability to see what must be done without letting sentiment interfere. It's the strength to cut ties when loyalty turns into liability. It's the courage to do what's necessary, not what's comfortable. People romanticize emotionality because it feels noble. They glorify passion, outrage, speaking your truth. But the truth doesn't need to be shouted. It just needs to be executed. And execution requires focus. Focus that isn't distracted by drama. Focus that isn't hijacked by other people's energy. Focus that stays locked on outcome, not opinion. You see, being cold doesn't remove your heart. It just puts your mission in charge. You can still care deeply. You can still love fiercely. You just refuse to let those feelings steer the ship, because emotions can inspire, but they should never govern. And yes, it's lonely at that level. When you choose logic over feeling, detachment over validation, people will distance themselves. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've lost your spark, but they'll be the same ones asking for advice when their emotions burn their world down. Cold men build empires while warm men build excuses, because one operates from discipline, the other from desire. The cold man wakes up when he doesn't feel like it. He does what's right, not what feels right. He acts according to principle, not pressure, and that's what makes him powerful. Being cold doesn't mean being cruel. It means being unshakable. You can still have empathy. You can still protect those you love, but you don't let compassion turn into compliance. You don't let kindness make you careless. You don't let comfort become your cage. Coldness is the weapon of the wise, not because it freezes life, but because it frames it. It separates what matters from what doesn't. It silences noise. It preserves energy. It keeps the mind sharp when others are dulled by feeling. The truth is, life will test your emotions again and again. It will push, provoke, seduce, and pressure you. And every time it's asking one question: will you stay centered? The weak answer with reaction. The strong answer with silence. So the next time they call you cold, don't defend yourself. Just smile. Because it means you've stopped living for their approval and started living by your own code. You're not cold, you're composed. You're not heartless, you're hardened by clarity. And that's what separates the man who survives from the man who leads. 8. The man who controls his emotions controls everyone else's. The moment you stop being reactive, you stop being readable. And when you can't be read, you become dangerous. Most people are emotional mirrors. They reflect whatever energy is thrown at them. Insult them, they get angry. Ignore them, they get insecure. Praise them, they get attached. They're not in control of themselves. They're being programmed by everyone around them. But the man who governs his emotions doesn't just control himself, he controls the room. Watch what happens when someone insults him and he doesn't flinch. Their power collapses, because the insult was never about words. It was about reaction. When you don't react, you deny them the fuel they came for. You expose their need for validation. You make them face their own powerlessness. That's when the dynamic shifts. You become the one setting the tempo. They dance to your silence, trying to provoke a response that will never come. Control isn't about being robotic. It's about being deliberate. You still feel everything. You just refuse to let feelings dictate behavior. You observe the storm, but you don't enter it. That's what gives you authority over every emotional battlefield. People can sense it instantly, that eerie calm, that untouchable presence. They don't know what to do with it, because when you can't be triggered, you can't be controlled. And when you can't be controlled, you become the gravitational force in every interaction. Look at history's most influential leaders, thinkers, and conquerors. They weren't the loudest. They weren't the most reactive. They were the ones whose composure stayed intact while others drowned in emotion. Caesar could wait. Machiavelli could smile while plotting 10 moves ahead. Marcus Aurelius could lose everything and still say, if it is endurable, then endure it. That's not weakness. That's power. Because emotion is leverage, and whoever holds it commands the other. The modern world doesn't teach this. It glorifies emotional expression. It tells you to speak your truth, be vulnerable, show your feelings. But what it's really teaching is surrender, how to hand your internal state to everyone else. They want you reactive, because the man who reacts is predictable, and the predictable man can be marketed to, manipulated, and moved. But the one who remains still, that man breaks the system. Control your emotions, and you start to notice something. Other people's emotions start to bend around yours. Their tone adjusts to your energy. Their confidence falters if yours stays steady. Their aggression fades when you don't feed it. This is the unspoken hierarchy of human interaction. Whoever controls their emotions first controls the emotional atmosphere for everyone else. You can test it anywhere. In arguments, keep your voice low. In chaos, move slowly. In panic, breathe deeply. Within minutes, others will start mirroring you. Why? Because calmness feels like dominance. It radiates certainty, and humans instinctively follow certainty. The emotional man wants to win arguments. The composed man wins people. He doesn't shout to be heard. Silence does it for him. He doesn't flex to appear strong. Indifference does it better. He doesn't demand respect. He becomes too centered to be disrespected. That's the paradox. The more you master your emotions, the more you master the emotions of others. Because humans crave stability, and power always gravitates toward the calmest person in the room. So practice stillness. Train yourself to pause before reacting, to breathe before speaking, to observe instead of explode. It'll feel unnatural at first. You'll feel detached, maybe even numb. But what's really happening is that your nervous system is being rewired from chaos to control. And once that control becomes instinct, you'll notice something profound. The world starts to bend in your favor. People start to respect your silence. Opportunities find you instead of you chasing them, because your stillness commands the same gravity as power itself. The emotional man is a puppet on invisible strings. The calm man holds the scissors. So stop trying to control others. Stop trying to win every argument or prove your worth. Control yourself, because once you master your emotions, the game ends. You've already won. The difference between men who rise and men who crumble is simple: emotional control. The world is chaos disguised as civilization. Every insult, crisis, and temptation is designed to pull a reaction out of you. The moment you react, you lose command of yourself, and the one who loses command of himself can command nothing. But when you learn to remain still in the storm, you become untouchable. No insult can wound you. No betrayal can shake you. No failure can define you. That's when the world bends, not because you forced it to, but because your composure becomes gravity itself. The calm man isn't passive. He's calculating. He knows every emotional outburst costs energy, and every moment of stillness earns respect. He moves less, but achieves more. He speaks less, but influences more. He reacts less, but controls everything. That's the power they don't want you to learn, the quiet dominance that comes from mastering yourself. Because once you do, you can no longer be controlled by systems, people, or fear. So start there. Stop being emotional. Observe. Breathe. Respond only when it serves your purpose. That's how kings move. That's how leaders rise. If this message hit you, if you felt that pull toward something higher, then this space was built for you. Drop your thoughts in the comments, share your perspective, and subscribe to join the men who refuse to live on impulse. Because the world doesn't need more emotional men. It needs more dangerous ones who are calm.